Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. The priestess was not dead yet, but the disciples had already lit the incense. It was richer and more pungent than the 7 oils at the great sept of Baelor. The sticks, blessed with prayer and stored in small iron holders, burned over hot coals. Warm, fragrant smoke rose to the sky, an aromatic, earthy scent like pine trees mixed with orange, lemon, and peppers. The incense was far more expensive than any wood. Burning so much at a funeral would be lavish even for a king. Yet the bier also was covered with purple-dyed fabric, garlanded with flowers, circled by beeswax candles, and suffused with oils and unguents. The Martell family had ridden to Planky Town with 300 guardsmen. Many lords and knights attended as well. The Dalts in Lemonwood, the Tollans from Ghost Hill, and Sir Ryan, Alarion, Daemon Sand's father. On the surface, everything appeared normal, the great and mighty of Dorne paying last respects to a high priestess. But underneath, Marcella detected a frisson of fear and doubt. The roads to Planky Town were full of pilgrims making their way to the mouth of the Greenblood River. Large crowds thronged around the boats, ships, and barges that made up the settlement. That was nothing compared to the armada of painted rafts on the Greenblood. Marcella had thought there had been a large number of pole boats 4 weeks past. Today she realized her error. The orphans of the Greenblood had come out in force, dancing and singing. The music soared, men and women singing in unison, harsh but beautiful, rich and grand in scope. "What language is that?" Marcella asked. "Ancient Rhoynar," Trystane said. "They are singing about Mother Rhoyne. I cannot speak, but I understand the words. The orphans have never given up their old tongue." Marcella had read that the language was banned by princes of Dorne centuries ago. Perhaps the famous words, unbowed, unbent, unbroken, belonged not to the Martells but to the spirit of the Rhoyne. House Martell claimed the legacy of Nymeria, and the Princess of Nysar was famous for the long, difficult journey from Essos. She burned the ships after landfall, declaring that there was no path back. It seemed that not all of the descendants of her followers agreed. "Prince Doran, I have prepared medicine." Sealord held the blue-green vial up. "The priestess is old, not sick." Arianne snapped. The prince's reproof was milder. "There is no sign of plague at the temple, Meister. The elixir cures more than the plague. Oleris writes that Jon Snow's creation could be useful for wounds and infections. It may not prevent death, but might ease her suffering," Sealord said. "Very well, you may try." Prince Doran said. As the maester went to work, a pair of young female attendants brought out a wooden tray inlaid with gold. A silver goblet rested in the middle next to a sharp double-edged knife. The handle was black, and there was no hilt. This was a ritual blade. An athame, and the chalice would catch the blood of the offering. Something like this would never be used in a sept. "You must excuse us. Only House Martell can perform this ceremony." "Of course, my prince." Marcella sat demurely as Trystane and Arianne left with their father and the other priests. The younger Sand Snakes followed at a respectful distance along with the other nobles. The chamber quickly cleared out, leaving her with the high priestess. Even the 2 maesters had left, once the medicine had been administered. Marcella almost fell asleep. There was something hypnotic about the heat and fragrant scents in the room. "Water! Water!" The old woman had awakened. Marcella scrambled to pour water from a clay jug. The priestess snatched the cup and drank everything down. Marcella poured again and again until the old woman finished the entire jug and wiped her mouth. "Should I call the Meister? Do you wish to see Prince Doran?" "Why? What good are they? Useless fools." The priestess sat up, cross-legged on the wooden frame. She pushed away the candles and tossed off the burial shroud. "Do you need anything else?" Marcella said. The old woman raised her withered hands. "More time, girl. 6 moons, perhaps. 12 would be enough. I have waited so long, dreaming about this day, and now that it is here, I do not have the strength. I will die in Dorne and never see the Rhine." "Is that so bad? The Rhine is still haunted by the sorrows, and people say that the waters are infested with pirates, slavers, and stone men. Mother Rhone has nourished her children since life began. She suffered for 1,000 years, but all curses must end. It is almost time. The dragons will fly, Prince Garin will return. And woe to the enemies of the mother, the old woman spat. Flecks of blood appeared on the venerable lips. The cloudy eyes closed again, and the shriveled face trembled. It must be terrible to be old, Marcella thought. She dipped the towel in the remains of the jug and pressed the cool, moist linen into the crone's hands. Rest, my lady. I will ask a servant for some food or drink. Perhaps the maester can give you more elixir. It is too late for that, child. Death is knocking at my door. He will not be denied. The priestess opened her eyes again and gave Marcella a shrewd look. You are kind, lion girl. Most princesses are not. You deserve a better fate. I am happy to serve the crown. Prince Doran and his family have been kind. I find Doran an interesting place. The priestess snorted. Doran is a wasteland, sand and scorpions, and a sun that bakes the land. The Martells are no different than other highborns. They will smile at your face, but stab you from behind. Vipers ambush their prey. Sun's spear is a pit of snakes. King's Landing is not much different. The old woman laughed. Yes, the world has always been a cruel place. Old Guise was a brutal land. The Valyrians learned slavery from the Ghiscari and applied it to their empire. Were the ancient Rhoynar any better? Marcella asked. Not as much as Dornishmen like to believe. We were not conquerors, like the Valyrian freehold, but we had slaves. All the Westeros did. At least the cities on the Rhone grew rich from spices, trade, and ironwork. The Rhoynar fought to stay free from the dragons, but they never dreamed of ending slavery. The priestess said, Not even Nymeria or Prince Garin? Nymeria fled Essos. You know her story as well as I do. As for Prince Garin, he was a great man, but not a good one. He was proud, petty, and vengeful. Had he bent the knee and made peace, he might have lived an easy life. He loved glory too much for that. How do you know, my lady? That was so long ago, and there are few stories about Garin. The stories in the books are all about Nymeria. She deserves much credit for saving the remains of the Rhoynar people. But Garin was named the Great for a reason. The priestess pulled out a necklace. A shimmering ruby in a golden setting emerged from hiding. What is that? Marcella asked. This is Garin's jewel. The priest found it in the waters of Cryon after the sorrows came. They say that the mother gave it to him to perform great magic. I cannot use it, but it is a relic of the prince, his great deeds, his foolish valor, his vengeful curse. The ruby gleamed against the priestess's pale mottled hand, throbbing like a beating heart. Marcella reached out and touched the stone with wonder. In the House of the Red Hands, Mira Forrester recalled her happy childhood in Ironrath. She had grown up with her 3 brothers, dutiful Roderick, rebellious Asher, and little Ethan, playing in the ironwood groves of the Wolfswood. She would have gladly stayed in the north. That was not meant to be. Her mother, Alyssa Branfield, second daughter of a minor crownland's house eradicated after the Targaryens fell, wanted Mira to learn the ways of a southern court. She had gone to Highgarden to serve Margaery Tyrell as a handmaiden. Mira was not the only Forrester to leave home. Her father, Lord Gregor, and her brothers, Roderick and Ethan, went south to fight for Winterfell in the Riverlands. Ethan even hinted that they had won great glory for their house and were held in high esteem. The same could not be said for her second brother. He had been exiled after a secret affair with Gwyn Whitehill was discovered, igniting a blood feud with their rival house. Asher lay on the bed before her, his eyes closed and his breath shallow. Her wild brother was a born warrior, skilled at sword, bow, and spear, and happy to fight from horse on foot, or even brawl in a tavern. The plague had brought him low. Dark swollen spots covered his neck and armpits, and when not delirious, he complained of fever and chills. Asher was not alone. Hundreds of patients were crammed into the hall, and the vomit and blood combined to create an overpowering stench of death and decay. How is your brother? A gray-haired woman asked. Sarah Snow commanded the Company of the Rose. A capable warrior, she could trace her lineage to Aegon's conquest, but her olive skin attested to the many generations spent as a sellsword in Braavos and the Free Cities. No improvement. The healers do not think there is anything to be done. Mira had been at Asher's side for weeks. He was weakening and might die far away from home. Hundreds of temples, and none of these priests can do a damn thing. Sarah spat. in plain robes of gray, white, blue, and black. Clerics from different shrines joined the healers of the Red Hands. The hall was full of followers of the Lord of Light, the Moon Singers, the Great Shepherd, the Great Stallion, the Lord of Harmony, and more exotic faiths. Holy men and women of every sect claimed their faith could heal the sick through divine intervention. So far, the gods of Braavos were noticeably deaf. "How are things outside the city?" Mira asked. Like many, the company had sheltered in a villa just outside Braavos to escape the plague. "Worst, there may be no cure, but at least here, the healers do their best to keep the sick alive. In the country, I hear the cries of mothers weeping and children hungry for bread. Mummers have abandoned playhouses, farmers have left the fields, and sea captains are unwilling to sail. Even thieves do not loot the dead, for fear of the plague. I should write a letter to my family in Ironrath so that they know Asher might never return." They burned the bodies of plague victims in Braavos. The large pyres billowed smoke in the day and glowed red and orange at night. "Do not give up hope. Your brother is too stubborn to die. He will fight for his life, like a proper man of the North," Sura said. The door burst open, and 6 swaggering bravos walked through, rapiers at their hips and dressed in colorful sashes and garish shirts and pantaloons. They guarded a young man who wore a blue robe so dark that it seemed black. His purple cloak bore the sigil of the current Sealord's house, 5 red balls and 1 blue on a gold shield. "I bring good news," Nico Antarian announced. As the Sealord fled the city in his pleasure barge, perhaps that might appease the gods. The fat man hooted. Even sick, the Bravosi loved their politics. "Quiet, Lord Ferrego has done everything he could. The Sealord has given gold and silver from his own vault to the House of the Red Hands," a merchant shouted back. Before the verbal sparring could become more heated, Nico thrust a glass vial full of a green gold substance forward. The cure for the plague. It arrived at the harbor this morning. "A trick!" the fat man screeched. Others joined in the derision. "Quackery from Pentos. Is House Antarian now a peddler of pills and potions? Do you expect us to bend over for the Sealord so he can administer this cure?" One priest, an old man with a long beard and a blind right eye in gray robes, stepped closer. "How do we know the cure works? Any man can lie for gold." With his left hand, Nico brandished a scroll. "Here is the most remarkable thing. This elixir will cost nothing." The sea captains also gave away instructions for brewing the medicine. Confusion broke out in the crowd. How can this be? A crone in a pale gray robe held up her hand. "Nico, how many ships carried the cure to Ragman's harbor, and where do they sail from?" 3, Madame Moonsinger, but the harbor master has sighted more sails close by. They come from Maidenpool, but the claim is that the cure has spread far and wide. Then this truly is the end of the plague, the old priestess said. The words were greeted with surprise, silence, and then a growing belief. A healer from the hospice opened the scroll. The directions appear simple. Mold corn liquor, a large barrel, mixing in air. The hardest part is harvesting the medicine. More priests and priestesses came forth, eager to examine the scroll. The 3 moonsingers held back, the young girl and dark-skinned woman offering arms to support the crone. She turned her eyes upwards, and then back to the Sealord's son. "You have forgotten something. What else did the captain say?" Nico Antarian nodded. "The cure to the plague has been sent to all of the free cities to be distributed to princes and paupers alike. These are the orders of Daemon Targaryen." "Daemon Targaryen?" A thin man with a hawk-like nose cried. "But Prince Daemon died over a century ago. He fell in the dance." "Not that Daemon, this one comes from the north, the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. Daemon is the true name, but he is also known as Jon Snow," Nico said. Mira wondered what that revelation meant for the North, the Reach, and her mission for Lady Margaery. How exactly could she hire the Company of the Rose without any idea of the North's intentions? Life had become more complicated, but then Asher might be cured. Mira was quite happy with that outcome. Well, Shireen liked the North. In Dragonstone, she had been lonely with only books, Meister Crescent, and patches for company. Part of that was the grayscale scars, but even had she been whole, there were few children her age in the castle. That was not true in this unnamed port with the extensive but still empty docks. She had met a few Wintertown boys and little birds, who told an awestruck Edric about the escape from King's Landing. A few highborn ladies hesitated, but the approval of Maya Whitstone, the wife of the Dreadfort's castellan, carried great weight. Most importantly, she could explore the town without any scrutiny from her mother's staff. "How many ships are you building?" Edric asked as they walked about the busy yards. "4. Sarah, 2 carracks and 2 caravels. The caravels are smaller ships, fast and easy to sail, with lading sails so you can zigzag into the wind. The carracks are larger vessels, and roomy enough to carry a large amount of cargo in the hold. The carracks have both square and lading sails, so the ship will do well windward and leeward." A winter bow boy replied. "And they can cross the narrow sea?" Shireen asked. "And much further. Once the Maester determines the right trade routes, these ships will travel to Ashai and beyond. We have ironborn prisoners working in the yards, but our ways are better than the Iron Islands. The caravel's length will match the longship. The carracks can be built larger than even your father's galley, easier to sail, stable in the high seas, and able to carry provisions for long trips. Don't you worry that others will steal Jon Snow's ideas at seacraft," Edric said. "Let 'em, Sarah. The Northern Fleet is only beginning. Our prince is not afraid of anyone." The Wintertown boys sang sea shanties as they returned to work. They were true believers, excited about the ships, and loyal to their absent leader. Shireen could not help but compare these children to her father's followers. The Florence and Fairings did not match the dedication or competence of Jon Snow's crew. "It is a pleasure to see you, Princess," a gruff voice spoke from behind her back. "Direvos." Shireen smiled warmly. The weathered face appeared tired, but then the Onion Knight was always like that, except as captain of his ship. "The Starks haven't harmed you, then?" Edric declared. "No, they didn't feed me to their dire wolves," the smuggler quipped. "I am glad you are well, sir." Shireen said, "Thank you, Princess. I must leave you too soon. The Starks are here now, and your father will want to speak with Lord Rob." "Will the Starks bend the knee?" Edric asked. Davos grimaced. "The Starks are a great house. Lord Eddard Stark was close to your father, Robert. I doubt that Robb Stark feels any such ties to Dragonstone or Storm's End. His loyalty is to the North and his brother Jon Snow." "But they are cousins," Edric said. "Cousins in name, but brothers in blood. You will see that when you meet the Starks." There were 3 Starks, but only 2 dire wolves. Most of the attention was paid to the oldest. The young wolf did not seem so young to Shireen. He might only be 1 in 7 or 1 in 8, but Robb Stark stood shoulder to shoulder with the other highborn. He greeted the northern bannermen with courtesy and dignity, speaking to them about their holdfasts and families. Robb's brothers were more restrained. Rickon was very young, a boy of 5 name days, who preferred the company of his black direwolf over knights and lords. Brian Stark sat in a wooden chair with wheels, pushed by a giant of a man who seemed slow of wits but gentle. The middle brother spoke little, but his deep blue eyes judged everyone. All 3 Starks had the Tully look, a stocky and strong build, bright blue eyes, auburn hair. None of them smiled, though. Years ago, Shireen had seen Sar Edmure at a tourney in the Crownlands. The young knight drank and cavorted with an entourage of laughing rivermen. These Starks were not like that, and eager to attend to business. A stone building with a slate roof in the ring. Fort hosted the meeting. Freshly cut boards covered the floor, and weapons decorated the drafty walls. Shields, swords, spears, bows and more exotic arms. Hand crossbows, curved knives, and pikes that reached nearly to the high ceiling. Her father faced Robb Stark at a large table close to a roaring fire. Lady Maya offered a tray of bread and salt, and Stannis grudgingly took a bite. Shireen and Edric squeezed into an alcove near the kitchen. Wintertown boys made room for them in the small space and offered warm black bread. Shireen dipped a slice into a crock of butter. They were hidden by shadows and servants, but near enough to overhear. "Davos claims that visions caused you to come north," Robb began. "Dark forces are rising in the north. Beyond the wall, the enemy grows stronger. When the stars bleed and darkness gathers, the one whose name may not be spoken will bring the cold and the night that never ends. Unless true men fight now, the world will end in ice. Another long night comes, and only Azar Ahai can bring back the dawn." Melisandre proclaimed. You have seen this in your dreams, Rob asked. I have seen this in the flames. It is written in prophecy as well. When the long night comes, Azor Ahai will be born again amid smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. The bleeding star has come and gone, and Dragonstone is a place of stone and salt. Stannis Baratheon is Azor Ahai reborn. You cannot be certain of that. That is one interpretation, but there may be others, Bran said. Rollo allows his faithful to glimpse the future in the flames. Melisandre replied, Jojen told me that dreams show the truth, but that men often do not understand them. My brother Jon says that you cannot trust prophecies, even when they come true, Bran said. The founder of House Stark built the wall in the long night. The first Brandon must have done that for a reason. The vows of the Night's Watch talk about the fire that burns against the cold, the light that brings the dawn, the shield that guards the realms of men. Is it so hard to believe that the great other will come from beyond the wall? Stannis said. The long night was very, very long ago. When something has not happened for 8,000 years, you do not expect it to occur next winter. Rob retorted. Say we believe in this vision. How large are the enemy forces? How will they breach the wall? I see towers crumbling into the sea as the dark tide rises from the depths. Dead things will shamble out of 100 caves beneath a great cliff and under a rain of fiery arrows. A cold wind will blow and a white mist will sweep over the field, extinguishing all the fires on the wall. Only skulls will be left, and great winged shadows will fall over the earth. Yes, but what is the size of this army? And how will they attack? And who or what is the one who must not be named? Does he lead these dead men? Rob pressed further. She is a priestess, not an outrider. You cannot expect her to be a scout. You are not a Northman, Lord Stannis. My father has taken me to the wall many times. The wall is 700 feet high and 300 feet thick. It stretches for hundreds of miles from the Shadow Tower to Eastwatch by the sea. There are over a dozen abandoned castles along the wall. If these dead men can cross everywhere, we cannot hope to defend the border. If they can cross only at Castle Black, then they must either scale the heights or go through the tunnel. That passage has 3 iron gates with murder holes and a guardhouse overlooking the outer door. If your Red Woman cannot tell us how they will attack, then how can we defend? These are good questions, Lord Stark, but can they not wait until Castle Black? Davos asked. We must go north. Who knows when the dead will attack? Stannis said. Rob shook his head. You cannot mount an attack or defense without knowing your enemy. How will your forces be supplied? You need provisions, weapons, and likely reinforcements. There is little to forage past the last hearth. Dead men do not need to eat, but your armies will. This plan to go to the wall is not much of a plan. The others are coming. This is the war that truly matters. Life versus death. Azor Ahai will strike against his enemies. The sword Lightbringer will give us victory, Melisandre said. If you want the living to not become dead, then we will need more time in preparation. Flaming swords will not win battles. If your men starve, Jon will be here in a few days. I will speak to him about the best way forward. Rob said, I do not need your bastard brother's help. Stannis gritted his teeth. If this is truly the long night, we will want every bit of help. My brother is good at war. His thoughts and plans were valuable in the Riverlands. We will need more than prophecies of Azor Ahai to defeat a real army. I see you have already chosen your side. In the Stormlands, you did not support my claim to the throne. Did you always mean to place the bastard on the Iron Throne? The Lord of Winterfell turned cold and hard. Jon bled for the North. He fought for House Stark. He has never asked for lands or titles, though he is very deserving. He did not tell me that he was a Targaryen, so he did not scheme and plot for the crown. Your witch says that Azor Ahai will wake dragons out of stone. She interprets that to mean dragon stone. That might be your castle, but it was built by Targaryens. My brother is the only dragon in Westeros. This was the first time Marcella dined on a houseboat. She had eaten aboard the Sea Swift, sailing from King's Landing to Dorne. That was a royal war galley, and the food was simple. Bread, porridge, boiled salt pork supplemented occasionally by fish. Officers were supplied with fresh goat milk and cheese, but meals were cooked on a giant iron stove set in sand and tin to protect the deck. The houseboat was different. The Lady Alia was named after a ruling princess famous for poisoning her consort with a plate of bacon. In size, it was as long and wide as a galley with a thatched roof over a wooden hull. The boat had no nails at all. Long planks were joined with coir rope made of tocket fibers and the walls coated with resin of boiled nut shells. Bamboo was used in the roofing, floor mats, poles, and window screens that allowed in light, air, and the scent of spices from the busy and spacious kitchen. As the boat drifted down the green blood, Myrcella marveled at the comfortable interior, the tranquil waters, and the wonderful food. Servants took away the plates of roast chickpeas, cheese and figs, and fiery stuffed peppers. The main dishes followed: olives simmered with orange and chilies, marinated white anchovies with pickled red onions on toast, peeled shrimp in an earthenware pot fried with garlic and oil, and a large shallow platter of rice with rabbit, chicken, snails, and 3 types of beans. Only a finger width of rice covered the wide pan, creating a slightly charred layer of crunchy rice on the bottom. The food of Dorne was exotic and flavorful. Much like the people, Myrcella dipped a piece of flat bread into the garlicky oil of the shrimp. Why isn't she dead already? She was dying 4 days ago. Arianne complained over a plate of golden rice and a glass of lemon sweet. Patience. The priestess will pass soon. Maester Kellerlout says that she barely clings to life. Prince Doran responded, but until she does, the crowds continue to gather. 100 more boats arrive every day. Planky Town has doubled in size. That does not count the thousands making the journey on foot. Dre says a convoy of wagons passed by Lemonwood heading north. Father, do you think we are in any danger? Trystane asked. The Martells had a formidable guard, dozens of knights, and hundreds more men at arms. The other lords came with large retinues. All these numbers paled, though, to the followers of Mother Roan. Doran shook his head. The priestess has said nothing, and there is no whiff of rebellion here. Mother Roan has never been a militant goddess, ready to smite other faiths. The worshippers are mostly small folk who come to pay their respects. The priestess is not our enemy. She is not our friend either. Arianne said, the orphans tell me that the clerics preach that the return comes soon. Mother Roan is still in their hearts and minds. But that has been true for hundreds of years, Trystane said. What has changed now? Excuse me, Myrcella said calmly. I know the return is going back to Essos and the rowing. But why? What is so great about a river? Doran put down a blood orange and wiped his thin lips. The Rhone is not a river, it is the river. 6 tributaries, the daughters, flow into their mother. Tens of millions lived, played, and loved on the Rhone. Trowan was richer and more splendid than any city now. Prince Garin's fortress, the Palace of Love, was 10 times the size of the Red Keep. His army was the largest the world had ever seen. These are just legends. Arianne said, a millennium has passed since Creoyen, Nysar, Goyen, Droho, Ernoi, Sarmel, and Sarhoi fell. We don't know what is true or false. The tales of the great city-states are true. I took a tour of the free cities and met your mother during my travels in Essos. Norvos is a wealthy city, with mines, tapestries, and a great fortress temple built out of marble and stone. Norvos sits on the Noin, the wild daughter of the Roin. So does Nysar. I only saw the remains from the river. The galley refused to approach the banks. Nymeria's palace is colossal, pink and green marble, statues and frescoes, domes and spires greater than the Tower of the Sun. Norvos is a shadow of Nysar, and Nysar is less than Creoyen. These were beautiful cities, Doran said. But they are all ruins now, thanks to the Dragon Lords and the Sorrows. Surely, the orphans and the priests know that. The glory is gone from the Rhone. Myrcella asked, but not the magic. Tell her, father. Trystane said, idiot, House Martell does not share this with outsiders. Even many of our lords do not know. Arianne said, Myrcella is not an outsider. Father said she will be a Martell. Trystane replied stubbornly. Doran sighed. The orphans still believe in the mother, not the mother above of the 7, but Mother Roan. Prince Garin had strange, uncanny abilities granted to him by the goddess. To raise walls, to summon great waterspouts, to bend the river. This was not the sorcery of the dragons, based on air and fire, but some say the magic still remains in the Rhone. Some fools. Arianne snorted. Magic is faded. The Targaryens are all that remain from Valyria. But where are they now? One is in the north. Another is in Meereen with her dragons. Doran said, magic is a strange thing. It is stronger in certain places. Stannis' Red Witch came from Ashai. There are stories of skin changers north of the wall and legends of water magic. But father, no one has seen water magic since the Spice Wars. Garin's curse was the last manifestation of Mother Rowan's power, Arianne said. That is not entirely true. When Nymeria landed in Dorne, Mors Martell ruled over the Sand Ship, a barren stretch of land. The Roynish water witches knew spells that made dry streams flow again and deserts bloom. That is why her enemies called Nymeria a witch queen until she defeated them and sent 6 kings to the wall, Doran said. But those spells would be incredibly valuable in Dorne. Was there no way to preserve them? Morcella asked. Nymeria ruled for 26 years. By the time she died, those ways were lost. Water magic belongs to the Rhoynar, not the Dornish. That age is gone. The Martells returned to the food, eating and drinking quietly. Martella thought again about the priestess's shimmering ruby. Was the relic truly Garin's jewel? If so, perhaps the magic was still there, lurking in the stone. Stannis Baratheon refused to meet the ship. Shireen disagreed, but understood why her father stayed away from the wharf. In Westeros, kings had never gotten along well with other kings. The Storm Kings of old fought the River Kings for control of the lands north of the Blackwater. Argilac Durandon, the last Storm King, had been feuding with Harren the Black, the king of the Isles and Rivers, when Aegon and his sisters landed. By the end of the conquest, 3 kings were dead, and 3 had bent the knee. Only the Princess of Dorne remained independent. Only 2 Baratheon knights accompanied them to the docks. Her father's other followers had loudly declared that they would never accept a bastard. Ser Davos Seaworth and Ser Andrew Estermont had more sense. They wanted to see the Targaryen prince with their own eyes, not second-hand accounts and wild guesses. I won't bend the knee, Edric declared bullishly. Probably a good idea, lad. Even the cleanest harbor is dirty. You would get mud on your new breeches, Davos said. I meant, I won't kneel. No matter what the Northmen demand, I will stand tall and proud, even if Jon Snow orders me to bow down. Snow doesn't know your name, Edric. Sir Andrew, the tall brown-haired man, said, and the North do not hold much to the customs and courtesies of the South. The Valmen tell me the Starks are a relaxed bunch, particularly with each other. Edric grimaced and thought, but if Snow is a Targaryen, wouldn't he insist on such things? Sir Axel says that Aerys the Mad burnt men alive for the slightest bit of defiance. What was true of the grandfather might also hold for the grandson. Sir Axel says many things. He once told me of his vision in the flames of beautiful young dancers spinning and swirling before Stannis. He should leave prophecies to the Red Woman. Davos replied, some Targaryens were mad, but many were not. If Snow cured the plague and gave that away, we should all be thankful. That does not mean we need to accept him as king, but Snow is hardly the second coming of Aerys. Ser Andrew said. The chattering stopped when the wolf wind, the sails displaying a white merman with green hair, beard, and tail, reached the docks. The Starks waited with the 2 dire wolves, flanked by Machel and Maya Redstone, several knights from the Vale, and Wintertown boys. Shireen held her breath, wondering if the men, in particular Lord Rob, would bend the knee. A fat man in rich blue-green velvet boomed out orders on deck in a jolly voice. Before sailors could tie the wolf wind down, a sleek, dire wolf with gray fur and a white belly leapt off. The dire wolves at Robb Stark's side sprang forward and were joined by a great white wolf with dark garnet eyes. The 4 wolves capered about, and in the happy chaos, Shireen missed the arrival of 2 figures who looked quite alike, with dark brown hair and gray eyes. 5-year-old Rickon ran forward and jumped into Jon Snow's arms, and Arya embraced Robb. There was much laughter and little ceremony. Snow greeted his siblings with affection, and the Valemen and children with warmth. No one kneeled except 2 smaller wolves, frolicking with their pack. My brother has returned to us. Let us celebrate that, Robb Stark said to the cheering crowd. A young voice cried out, Meister, are the stories true? Are you a Targaryen? They are. I am a Targaryen and also a Stark. Whatever my name or title, I will always be a man of the North. Shireen was still watching the sailors disembark when a boy came over with guards. She recognized Sandor Clegane with the burned face, but not the woman in the gray plate armor. Sir Davos, my master wishes to speak with you. The boy with a white wolf pin said. The Onion Knight hesitated. Shouldn't that conversation include King Stannis? We are looking for him now, sir boy. But Lord Stannis and his Red Witch are not near the docks. You may come. Our prince has no time to waste. May I bring my companions? Davos asked. The boy shrugged. If you wish. Jon Snow has nothing to hide. The tap room was dominated by the fat man from the boat. Wyman Manderly had an enormous tray stacked before him, pork pies, boiled eggs, fried sausages, capons, and a large bowl of porridge drizzled with crushed nuts and honey. He sat opposite Snow and Arya Stark, and his booming voice recounted to the Starks the state of affairs at White Harbor. Shireen heard a few words about the Old Mint, barrels of whiskey, and trade with Essos. Sir Davos, thank you for coming. Please sit down, Snow said. Lord Wyman struggled to stand, offering up the cushioned chair. He had the biggest belly and the most chins Shireen had ever seen. His sausage-like fingers were stained with grease and crumbs. Two servants came over to help, but stopped at Snow's glance. My lord, please stay. You are one of my most capable and leal counselors. Robb Stark said. The lord nodded gratefully and fell down on the seat. As chairs were brought over, Davos introduced their group. This is Sir Andrew Estermont of Greenstone, Edric Storm, and Princess Shireen. Robb nodded. You know my brother Bran and Rickon, Lord Michael and his Lady Maya, and Lord Rubber Royce and Sir Andrew Tollett. Lord Wyman sits with my brother Jon and sister Arya. Greetings were exchanged as the Stormlanders sat down. Sir Davos, tell us everything about these visions of the North, Snow said. I only know what I have heard. I have not seen things in the flames, but some worshippers of R'hllor have. Melisandre talks of demons made of snow and ice, armies of dead men, and a cold that drives men mad when the long night comes. What about the wall? Has she ever mentioned how the dead cross the wall? She speaks about the others gaining strength beyond the wall and how dark forces are rising in the north, but she has never spoken about the crossing, Davos admitted. Lord Snow, you must understand, witches never speak clearly. The Red Woman hides behind riddles and mystery. Perhaps the Lord of Light does show her visions, but what is real, what is mistaken, and what is a lie, none of us know. Sir Andrew said, when did the Red Woman first speak about Azor Ahai and the others? Snow asked. She arrived in Dragonstone some years past. Queen Silis was one of the first converts to the faith of R'hllor. After that, the Red Woman began to whisper that Stannis was Azor Ahai reborn. We did not know the prophecy, but thought it meant that Stannis would be king. As for the others, I am not certain, but much later, Davos answered, Azor Ahai was a hero, not a king. The first men had a similar legend, a last hero who fought the others with only a dozen companions. He had no army, Snow said. Then how did he win? Davos said. He allied with the Children of the Forest. Their magic defeated an enemy that men could not, Bran said. That sounds hard to believe, little forest men saving the world, Sir Andrew said. Is that much less plausible than a flaming sword? Do you really think Stannis will slay one monster and the entire army of the dead will disappear? Snow shot back. Armies break when commanders fall. We must believe Melisandre's tale that Stannis is Azor Ahai and will lead us to victory. You have not seen her sorcery. The Red Women can summon fire and bind shadows to her will. His Grace had an army, but no soldier fought at the siege of Storm's End. Blood magic took the castle. Sir Andrew shuddered. That is true. Courtney Penrose was the Castellan of Storm's End. Stannis told me that Melisandre had seen his death in the flames. He said the night is dark and full of terrors. A day later, the night had died, Davos said. How did Sir Courtney die? Rob asked. No one knows. The Onion Knight avoided the eyes of Jon Snow and Robb Stark.
My lord,
Wyman said, this talk of magic troubles me. Witches and warlocks cannot be trusted. Relying on sorcery and prophecy never turns out well. What else can we do? An army of dead men threatens the wall. That's dark magic too. And if they cross the wall, everyone in the north is in danger, Rob said. The others may be a grave threat, but what does anyone know about this red woman? What does she want? The Lord of White Harbor continued. She declares Stannis to be Azar Ahai. His men believe that means Stannis will claim the Iron Throne. When that fails, the Red Woman starts to speak about dead men at the wall. A curious sequence of events. There is trouble at the wall. The wildlings have chosen a new king, and the Lord Commander writes that corpses have come back to life and killed rangers of the Night's Watch. Her visions sound fanciful, but I believe are likely true, Rob said. But can we trust her? Who does she really serve? Priests care more about faith than kings. She may have beguiled Stannis, but her true loyalty is to Rhaegar. And what does Rhaegar care about the North? Wyman said, the Lord of Light's enemy has always been the Great Other. The Dark God is also known as the Soul of Ice, Lord of Darkness, and the God of Night and Terror. If these others serve that God, Melisandre will do her best to destroy them, Shireen said. So she says, and perhaps she might even believe that, but I would be cautious about priests and odd religions. The lives of non-believers do not matter to fanatics. I have little faith in this red woman and her fire god. Lord Wyman is right, Rob declared. Trust should be reserved for those who have earned it. This story of Azor Ahai may be a lie, and even if it is true, Stannis may not be this prophesied prince. We cannot rely on a flaming sword to defeat an army. We will need allies to fight the Great Other beyond the wall, Bran said. There are other allies, Snow interrupted. We just need to find them. The Starks waited, but her father made no appearance at the meal. The Wintertown boys were refused entry to the Baratheon camp. Shireen wondered if Melisandre was performing a sacrifice to R'hllor that night. In this northern port town, there were no statues of the Seven, so any ritual would appear to be only large bonfires and nothing more sinister. As they walked back, her cousin stumbled and sat down hard, like a man in the cups. That surprised her. Edric was no so. Shireen waved forward the two knights, staying with her cousin. Under the light of the full moon, she could see tears in the deep blue eyes. Edric, what is wrong? Sir Courtney. He fell off the battlements of Storm's End that night. Lord Elwood claimed it was an accident, but it wasn't. The witch killed him. Her cousin had grown up as a ward at Storm's End. Did you know Sir Courtney well? Edric rubbed away the tears. He was my guardian. I was the king's bastard, so no one mocked me. But I never spent much time with Renly or saw my father. Sir Courtney was strict, but kind. He made certain I attended my lessons with the maester and master-at-arms, and would take me hawking as a reward. He was a good man and true. We don't know if Melisandre killed the Castellan, Shireen cautioned. She must have. Stannis tells Devos that Sir Courtney will die, and then he falls from the walls that night. I am not clever, but how else would your father know? Sir Courtney and Uncle Renly had both died in suspicious circumstances. Shireen wondered who else the Red Witch had targeted with her magic. Edric, I am sorry for your loss. Terrible things happen in war. It was not war. He did not die fighting. This was murder. The dire wolves leaped across the icy water, their keen senses detecting prey behind groves of oak trees and sentinel pines. A bright moon shone down on the forest and the hills, the silver light reflecting off floating branches and half-frozen stones in the tributary of the weeping water. 2 years ago, this might have been just two brothers, hunting boar in the Wolf's Wood, but now Rob was Lord of Winterfell, and Jon was rightful heir to the Iron Throne. Grey Wind was dead too, one of the two littermates slain south of the Neck. Lord Beric should return in less than a moon. We will see how the Vale Lords receive news of Baelish's death. Jon had finished recounting the events of Maidenpool. It was a winding tale full of Tyrells, Martells, the Kingslayer, a faceless man, and Littlefinger. Have you heard from either Beric or Thoros? I wonder also whether the Martells and Tyrells will attempt to contact you, Rob said. If they send a raven, the letter would go to Winterfell and not here. With the cure to the plague, alliances may be shifting. Lady Olenna is a force, but she will need to speak with the other Reachmen. The Red Viper will consult with his brother. With less urgency, they might send a messenger in person, not a raven. Jon, tell me the truth. Do you want to be king? You gave no hint of that when we were fighting in the Riverlands. We were busy with the war, and I only was certain that I was a Targaryen after the Red Fork. But you must have given this a great deal of thought. Your blood cannot be ignored when you announce it to the Seven Kingdoms after walking through a fire. Jon Snow sighed. I never wanted a great title. I would have been happy being a knight, and after the Citadel, a Maester. All I desired was a life with honor. I suppose even that is too much to ask from the gods. I thought we would have more time. In a few years, the North will be much wealthier and the forces replenished. Did you rebuild the North for House Stark, or to fight a war for the Iron Throne? I had no intention of starting a war. A strong North is a good thing, and the proper reward for our bannermen. I plan to tell you about Rhaegar and Lyanna in a few years. Alaris thinks that Joffrey will be a bad king. If he clashes with Tywin or fights with the Tyrells, then it would make the conquest of the South much easier. Rob finished the thought. Your friend Alaris is right. Joffrey is a bad king. Perhaps Renly would have had a peaceful reign. But he was a terrible war leader. He was more fit for feasting than fighting. And as for Stannis, what is it about the Iron Throne that makes men so mad? It is not just the Iron Throne. Kings have never been easy to deal with. The weak ones invite failure and chaos. The strong ones become tyrants and force themselves on others. Both weak and strong are prone to war, and long wars are never good. Stannis has been here several days before you arrived. He is not a man given to easy courtesies, so I had his knights watched. My Wheatstone saw them lighting a great circle of fire. The Red Witch cried, one realm, one god, one king, and the honor guard took up the cry, beating their swords and spears against their shields. Rob shook his head. Was Stannis there? Jon asked. He was in the middle of the bloody circle. Maya says that at least he did not join the chant. That would be even more mad. He is caught up in this tale of Azor Ahai. Stannis has gone too far and cannot turn back, because if the story is not true, his men will abandon the cause. What does Stannis have to back his claim to the Iron Throne? A few castles and not many men, Jon said. Two of those castles are Dragonstone and Storm's End. Dragonstone has few sworn houses. Storm's End is richer, but the Stormlanders will not follow Kinslayer. The forces he brings to the wall are not enough. House Karstark and Umber have more men, and they are used to the cold. If the White Walkers and others can be beaten by a few thousand men, it is not much of a threat. But if the enemy has a great army that can bring down the wall, then Stannis and our bannermen will be overrun. You do not believe that he is Azor Ahai. Jon shrugged. I have not met the man yet, but I know the legend of Lightbringer. Azor Ahai forged the sword by thrusting the hot blade through his wife's breast. He gave what he loved most in life to defeat the others. What has Stannis given up? A few statues of gods that he no longer believes. The witch twists the prophecy for her benefit. People can believe their own lies. The words are when the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai will be born again amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. So, where are the dragons out of stone? Jon pointed out. Stannis sailed from Dragonstone. Dragonstone was the seat of Aegon before the conquest. Aegon had real dragons, not stone carvings or statues. Stannis has not woken any dragons. Only one person has in the past 100 years, Daenerys Targaryen. Her dragons are young, and she is thousands of miles away. And why would she come? She is a queen in her own right. She may not. But if the long night comes again, this war will not end easily. You remember old Nan's stories? A night that never ends. White Walkers in the darkness, riding dead horses and hunting with packs of spiders as large as hounds. If those tales are true, a Red Witch and a would-be king are not enough. If the wall comes down, we will need all the allies we can find, near and far in the north, the south, and Essos as well. Through the window in the tavern, Arya could see flames lick the dark sky. At dusk, the Queen's men lit the bonfire from heaps of kindling, the sparks blending first with the fading rays of sunset before roaring into an orange, yellow, and red blaze. As night fell, more worshippers gathered around, and the shadows grew longer and longer. Stannis and Davos did not attend, but there were plenty of Baratheon knights and men-at-arms, their eyes drawn to the sultry curves of the priestess. Melisandre stood closest to the fires, her long copper hair and dark red robes melding with the flames. The pattern of prayers was always the same. The Red Woman thanked the god for the gifts of light, fire, and heat, while beseeching him to bring back the dawn and banish the darkness. The followers chimed in with short staccato invocations to the Lord of Light. At key moments, when Melisandre invoked the name of Azor Ahai, Lightbringer, and the Great War to come, the flames would surge higher, striking awe into the rapturous crowd. It was a mummer's trick. The Red Woman had long sleeves to hide powders and sleights of hand. She had an excellent voice, rich and deep, that carried well and reminded listeners of spices and cloves, cinnamon and nutmeg, from Ashai, Essos, and the gates to the Jade Sea. The priestess could beguile many into following the Red God. Arya was not one of those. "Why don't they stop that chanting?" Rickon cried out. "It will be at least another half an hour." Arya replied, "The Red Woman still needs to warn her followers, for the night is dark and full of terrors. Then she will ask for the return of the sun. The sun always comes back. We don't need this red relou for that. Idle war is stupid. The Lord of Light is named Rolla. Rollar. What's the difference?" "We wake up in the morning and see the sun again." Rickon spat in disgust. Arya hoped her youngest brother would always be right. Arya was now 2 and 10, and for every day she had lived, the sun set in the west and rose in the east. Prayers to the gods, whether it was the old or the new, were not required, but that was not what the followers of the Lord of Light believed. Rolder's main purpose was the war with the Great Other. Melisandre says that the long night will be upon us. Her prophecy is that when the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai will be born amidst smoke and salt to wake dragons out of stone. So, Rickon replied, the red star was the comet, which has come and gone. The Red Woman thinks that darkness is gathering beyond the wall. Once the long night falls, the sun won't rise again. She is lying. Rickon snarled, that is just a scary story. Old Nan told us about the long night, but it won't come true. It is a lie. It may not be a lie, Jon said calmly. He and Rob had returned. Bran also sees enemies assembling. Cold shadows with cold blue eyes and pale white swords. Rob slumped down heavily at the table. His visions are getting more and more vivid and frightening. White walkers, ice spiders, an army of the dead. Bran says the Great Other will bring the long night back with all its horrors, and the realms of men will fall. How long did the long night last? Arya asked. Years. There are hundreds of legends of the long night, all slightly different. In Yi Ti, they say the sun hid its face for a lifetime, until the monkey warrior accepted her tale. In the Roan, the long night lasted a generation and froze the great river. There are stories, too, in Qarth, Lothjayan guess, of a creeping darkness. In the north, the first men were driven south by the others. Children were born, lived and died, all in the darkness. But how long a life lasted back then is hard to say, Jon answered. This was 8,000 years ago, Rob said. Who knows what is real and what isn't? Maybe this time the Great Other can be stopped before his forces march south. Arya snorted doubtfully. Do you expect Stannis Baratheon to be Azor Ahai reborn? If he can't defeat the Lannisters, how can he beat the White Walkers? Melisandre is afraid to even say the name of the Great Other. Stannis Baratheon is a good fighter and a fair leader of men. He defeated the Ironborn in the Greyjoy Rebellion. But Arya is right. Beating a pirate fleet does not mean you can face a god. The Great Other is the Red God's equal. Stannis might blunt the attack for a bit, but he will not win a war against the dead, even if his army was much larger. Prayers from the Red Woman will not make a difference. None of us are ready to battle a god, Jon said. Maybe Thoros is right, Rob murmured. Maybe you are Azor Ahai and can find a way. Jon interrupted. I have no desire to be Azor Ahai. Who would want to suffer such a fate? The last hero went to the cold lands and searched for years. He lost his companions, his horse, his sword, and even his dog. It is not a good tale. He won by killing his wife, and only after the deaths of tens of thousands, many of them innocent women and children, from famine and cold. If that is the future, then it is a dreadful one. We must do everything possible to stop this. Why should we accept the words of the Red Woman? Do you think she is lying? Arya asked. I don't know, and I don't care, Jon shrugged. A storm is coming. That is clear from Bran's dreams. We can listen to prophecies, but we do not need to obey them. If the world will end, then let us fight. We will face the great other and our enemies like men. And women, Arya said. Women can fight too! Jon smiled and ruffled her hair. Of course, sister, women are just as brave as men. So you have decided, then, Rob said, you will sail to Braavos to get allies. I will speak with the Iron Bank first, but I mean to travel further. We cannot fight this threat with swords and spears. We need magic. You are going to get dragons. Arya smiled. Do you think Daenerys will be another Visenya? Will she be a warrior as well as a dragon rider? Daenerys is a conqueror. She has defeated 3 cities in Slaver's Bay. I hope she will look favorably on our needs, given shared blood and the cure to the plague. I will head to the wall to see whether Stannis and the Red Witch can stop these threats. The Night's Watch must be warned, and our bannermen prepared. I will write a raven to the lords. Rob said, I'm going with Jon to Braavos. Arya declared, You can come, sister. But Essos is a queer place, full of mystery. We may find allies there, but also enemies. We know little about the free cities, only that they are the colonies of Valyria. The freehold is still a great unknown. The dragon lords were strong in sorcery, and those secrets may still linger in Essos. No one has ever returned from Valyria, Rob said. Magic is a dangerous thing. Be careful in your travels, brother. Her older brothers looked grim. It was a heavy burden on Rob to be the head of House Stark. The Long Night might be a threat to everyone, but would fall first and hardest on Winterfell and the Stark bannermen. As for Jon, he had a more difficult task, to find some way to strengthen the North against an impossible threat. He had wanted to do so with farms, harbors, bridges, and roads, but that would not work against the dead. Dragons might, but even that was no sure thing. Since Robert Baratheon died, House Stark had been in a perpetual state of war with only little respite. We have no choice. Arya thought, wolves were born to fight. The Sealord's palace sat northeast of the Iron Bank on a canal overlooking the lagoon marking the end of the Sweetwater River. Built around a courtyard and patterned with soaring arches and gold-painted domes, the structure was the meeting place for the merchants, magisters, officials, keyholders, and noble families of Braavos. What it lacked in size compared to the great castles of Westeros, the palace made up for in rich gaudy decorations, elaborate facades, sculptures of marble and stone, and giant frescoes on the walls and ceilings. Commerce, not wars, had made Braavos wealthy. First the treasures of the lagoons and salt, fish, and a sea snail that excreted a dark purple dye, and now the fleets of ships that traveled the shivering, narrow, and summer seas. The purple sails traveled as far north as frozen Ebe, east as the Jade Gates, and south as the jungles of Sotherios. Braavos was a young city full of energy, exuberance, and vitality. In many places, death was greeted with mourning. King's Landing prayed to the stranger after the great spring sickness, and Old Town wept and wailed when counting those who fell from the shivers. But after the dragon's cure was distributed, Braavos celebrated with music, dance, drinking, and feasting. Dandies strutted about the moon pool, eager for a duel with their rapiers. Minstrels serenaded courtesans on sleek barges, and mummers performed free shows and farces in inns and alehouses along the bridges and docks. When the playhouses opened next week, patrons would pay full fares to attend, but for now the city rejoiced in their escape from death. That was doubly true at the Sealord's palace. Meera, along with Captain Sarah Snow and her brother Asher, joined the revelry in the courtyard. Meera wore a black lace mask, a simple disguise next to the full and half-gilded, jeweled, and feathered masks in the crowd. Sarah hid her face behind a Yeti veil attached to a golden circlet, and Asher wore a barbuto helmet with a T for his eyes and mouth. The gray steel matched his breastplate and sword. Asher grabbed a cream cake, stuffed with nuts, off a servant's tray. "You look like a lady from the Reach," Sarah commented. She was dressed as an imperial courtier in yellow robes adorned with birds and clouds. "I have no other clothes." Mira defended herself. "Most shops are closed, and the few open ones charge a fortune. Besides, Asher came as a sellsword. He is a guard. Guards and servants come as they are. But you are meeting the Sealord tonight." Sarah sighed. "Well, perhaps it doesn't matter. There are more important things going on tonight than the uncloaking. Why do we need to meet with Lord Anteron? Surely he does not concern himself with every mercenary in the city," Mira said. "When the Sealord sends an invitation, he expects a reply. The Company of the Rose is not just a band of traveling sellswords. Westeros has been our home for many years. The Sealord acknowledges the debt to Jon Snow, but he may not be ready to declare the lions and stags his enemy," Sarah said. "Would Braavos really fight for the North?" Mira wondered. "A North? No. The eventual ruler of the Iron Throne in a Targaryen restoration? Possibly. But it will depend on what Braavos receives as payment," Sarah said. "Everyone wants to be on the winning side." Asher snorted cynically. "The Sealord wants great rewards, with little risk, like every sellsword. Why do you think Braavos is so rich?" It was not just the Sealord who demanded an audience. There were half a dozen robed priests in the Grand Chamber, and 2 envoys of the Iron Bank, in purple and black. Mira noted that none of these, except the Sealord's son Nico, bothered to wear a mask. These were serious people, intent on serious business. The Sealord was an old man whose hard black eyes belied his failing body. He had a thin smile, and despite sitting by a roaring fire, was covered in thick silk blankets. A cup of dark liquid rested in 2 bony, spotted hands. That was the only drink in the chamber. "Have you been in Braavos long?" Mira was certain the Sealord already knew the answer. "2 moons. My ship arrived when the plague hit Braavos. I am glad that the city has recovered from the recent troubles." Fuego and Tehran gave a brief nod. "Thanks to the elixir. Tell me, Lady Forrester, what do you know of this Daemon?" "Captain Snow says you wish to hire the Company of the Rose to serve the Targaryen prince." "In truth, I did not know he was a Targaryen. I was sent here to smooth ties between the Reach and the North. My lady thought it would be a sign of goodwill if the Company of the Rose returned to the service of Winterfell." Mira paused to gather her thoughts. "This may seem poorly timed, but when I left King's Landing, we had little news of House Stark. There was no reason to believe that Snow would travel to the Crownlands, or that he would cure the plague. The ships from Maidenpool say that House Tyrell invited the Targaryen to come south. Did they suspect his identity? Is this a scheme by the Tyrells and the Starks to claim the Iron Throne?" The Sealord's son asked suspiciously. "My lords, I cannot see how Ned Stark was an honest and honorable man. Robert Baratheon held him in great esteem, almost as a brother. When I was a child, I met the Starks several times with my family. There were no rumors of Snow at the harvest feasts, only that he was Ned Stark's bastard. The South sees the North as a harsh and remote land. If there was no talk at Winterfell, then there would be even less in the Reach or King's Landing. No, I am certain that this was a secret." Mira replied, "Had the Stag King known, there would have been a war." The Sealord said, "A war 5 or 10 years ago would have been a simple thing. A few houses pretending to be lions and stags, sending knights, archers, and spearmen to die in the frozen north, or the royal fleet blockading House Manderley and White Harbor. But this has become a complicated affair, bloodier and of far greater danger to Braavos." "But why, my lord? If I sail north, then I would seek an audience with Jon Snow and Robb Stark. It takes time to call the banners. By itself, the North cannot defeat the Iron Throne. The Starks will need to seek allies. I do not see how that would put your city in peril," Mira said. "In the war, things can change quickly. No one is truly safe, and small pebbles create great ripples," the Sealord said. The hunched-over crone in a dark red felt robe spoke. "The Dragon King is coming to Braavos." He is still a prince, the Sealord said. A king requires a kingdom. Prince Daemon has no throne, only a name. A great name, to be sure. Call him what you like. The priestess interrupted. He will be here before a fortnight passes, but Braavos must choose soon whether it stands with the dragons. Why is Snow coming? Mira wondered aloud. We do not know, but the Moonsingers have seen this in their visions. The House of Black and White and the Temple of the Lord of Light also believe this to be true. We have no spies in the north. Even if we did, this Daemon does not seem very predictable, the Sealord said. An enemy would not save us from the plague. Daemon Targaryen does not sail with an army. He may be here to talk or gather sellswords. The Sealord's son said, Dragons are known for deeds, not words. They rarely rely on paid swords. A tall man, richly dressed from the Iron Bank, said, History shows that dragons are violent creatures. Methinks Daemon is like others of his house, ready to unleash blood and fire. You are speaking about Queen Daenerys in Meereen. Nico and Tyron remarked. The envoy's face was unreadable. Great forces are gathering in the free cities. Volantis thirsts for war. The Triarchs are only the tip of the spear. Magisters, mercenaries, archons, and princelings have joined the cause of the masters, who offer enormous bounties in gold, gems, and slaves for revenge. A great fleet is gathered at the mouth of the Rhoyne. Had the plague not occurred, they would already be at the gates of Meereen. Volantis wishes to lead the other free cities. They will kill the Dragon Queen, enslave the freedmen, restore Slaver's Bay, and bring back the slave trade. There will be blood. And what will Braavos do? I thought the first law of Braavos was that no man, woman, or child of the secret city would ever be a slave or a thrall, Mira said. The Sealord's face looked old and haggard. The law of Braavos, but not Essos. Braavos is only one city. One city cannot defeat 8. Our trade happens on the seas. We are a naval power and cannot hold land. Braavos is opposed to slavery, but cannot stop the slave trade.
We should, Father.
We should end all slavery. It is an abomination. Nico said fervently, Let us do what is right. A war against the masters would damage trade. The magisters join the fight because Daenerys is costing them gold. A great deal of gold. Slaves are the source of wealth for much of the free cities. The banker replied, And that wealth pours into the Iron Bank. We know the truth. Many keyholders profit from the slave trade. How long has it been since Braavos fought against slave masters? Nico shouted. We defeated Pentos in the 5th War, the banker said. That was 100 years ago. The Pentoshi still practice slavery. The magisters collar and brand their servants, the Sealord's son said in disgust. Volantis is far, and Meereen is even further. The Sealord sighed. A war over the slave trade will be long and bloody. We do not know whether Queen Daenerys can be trusted. She did end slavery, but in a brutal way. She killed the good masters after buying a legion of Unsullied in Astapor. She sacked Yunkai and Meereen. Mira thought the Sealord was being unfair. The Dragon Queen put her enemies to the sword. So did many others. Tywin Lannister gained his fame by butchering House Rhaen and the rebellion. Robert Baratheon and his allies had killed many followers loyal to the dragons. The great houses survived, but many smaller names were extinguished. Pardon, my lords, but what will Jon Snow do when he hears about the queen being threatened? He has never met his aunt. The Dragon Queen is a potential rival. Her death costs him nothing, and would strengthen his claim to the throne. The Targaryens have always been a quarrelsome family. They have been guilty of kinslaying before. The envoy from the Iron Bank said, The Valyrian freehold united against outside threats. The old priestess closed her sharp eyes. Dragons may quarrel with each other, but they will not suffer the harpy, the tigers, and the rabble of old Gez. Tell me, girl, what will Daemon do if the masters threaten his aunt? Jon Snow will fight. Wolves do not let their brothers and sisters die. Mira replied immediately, That is your answer, Sealord. Volantis has declared war against the Dragon Queen, but there are other dragons, and they are just as capable of fire and blood. Valyria is eternal. Valyria is dead and buried, shattered islands in a smoking sea, the older banker said. The freehold died in a single day, leaving only scorched and demon-haunted lands. The priestess shook her head. Valyria is not a place, it is a dream. The freehold was more than an empire. The glass candles are burning, the dragons are growing, magic returns, and so will the dragon lords. Before this war ends, we will see sorcery greater than anything since the Doom. The embers will spark in Essos before consuming the world. Aegon forced his tired eyes open. His bones ached and his face dripped with beads of sweat. He flexed his fingers and toes, grateful that blood was returning to the extremities. The shivering was gone, and his teeth no longer convulsed in an odd chatter. Aegon tried to rise, only for his head to swim, and fell back heavily onto the feather-stuffed mattress. "Your Grace, you are still too weak." The healer splashed broth from a silver goblet into Aegon's mouth. "The fever has broken, but you must rest to regain your strength." Haldon wiped a cool cloth, cleaning up both the errant droplets of soup and the damp sweat. A large tent held half a dozen others. A few blurry faces were familiar, Septa Lemore, Duck, and Haldon Hathmeister, but Aegon did not recognize the hairless servants or the bearded guards. "How long?" 2 weeks, Your Grace. "But Illyrio managed to secure the elixir 4 days ago," Lemore said. "I will let Lord Connington know that you are awake." "Wait," Aegon rasped, his voice hoarse with disuse. "What of the Golden Company?" The Maester placed the goblet down. "A few hundred died, a quarter of the company are still ill, but many will recover. You received the first batch, brewed by the Temple of R'hllor. Shipments of elixir continue to arrive from Braavos. The Magisters may grumble about the high cost, but their coffers remain open. It will be a close thing, but Pentos will survive." It had been a close thing for Aegon as well. He knew from lessons with Haldon that plague often struck down armies, but this outbreak had happened without any war. The vaunted Golden Company, the finest band of sellsword's gold could buy, might have been vanquished without a fight. Aegon shuddered for the past few days, lost in a haze of weakness and pain. The fever, the aches, the chills, and the swelling of those dreaded black spots. He could have fallen into a sleep that never ended. And then what would have happened to all of their plots? "I need to get up. Tell Connington to gather the leaders of the company to meet with their king." Aegon swung his legs to the side. The bed was high, and his feet dangled in the air. Aegon jumped off, grimacing as he landed on both feet. "Your Grace, this is not wise. You are still weak from the ordeal." The Maester said. "I will look weaker if I don't rise," he snapped, as the servants rushed to dress him in red and black. Young Griff, the blue-haired boy sailing down the Rhoyne, was gone. He was Aegon the Vifalais, last of his name, and needed to be seen as such by the Golden Company. Sellswords demanded gold, but they respected strength more. Aegon settled himself by using a sword and scabbard as a makeshift staff. "Lead the way, Duck." Strickland and Illyrio waited in the tiled courtyard. Those two were seated, while Connington stood with the other captains, the Summer Islander, the Lysini spy, the bastard who hated apples, and veterans who wore their wealth in golden armbands. "Your Grace, I am overjoyed to see you better," the Magister exclaimed, stroking a forked, oily yellow beard. Casks of pale green and amber wine were stacked next to platters of fried fingerfish, suckling pig with a plum sauce, goose livers drowned in wine, quails in honey, and a single plate of buttered parsnips. The vegetables were untouched. "Pardon me for not getting up, Your Grace." Strickland smiled. "My poor feet, blisters from the march, from the disputed lands." Aegon swallowed his distaste for the lavish feast. The Golden Company had been hired to win back a throne, not eat rich and fatty foods. Then again, Strickland was a cautious man, more focused on gold and contracts than battle. The Commander-General seemed more a paymaster than a warrior. "My lords, is there news from the Seven Kingdoms?" A riot broke out in King's Landing over the death of a Reachman. The Lions have been feuding with the Roses. Lysono Mar, the blonde, effeminate, and perfumed spy, said. "What about the North? What more do we know about this secret Targaryen?" Aegon asked. "Jon Snow." The Lysini spymaster shook his head. "There are fanciful tales about his actions during the war in the Riverlands. He attended the Citadel. He commanded the Northern Army in Robb Stark's absence. But your brother has been hidden for years. Half-brother. Connington said sourly. And we do not even know if that is true. It might all be a lie, spread by the Starks. The boy declared himself to the Tyrells and Martells at Maidenpool. The world certainly believes that he is a Targaryen, Illyrio said. Since birth, Aegon had been told by Griff that he was the last hope for his house, that he would avenge his father and regain the Iron Throne. Now there were 2 other dragons, and neither knew of his existence. Will the North be an ally or an enemy? Even if Jon Snow is Rhaegar's son, he is a bastard. He is also younger than you. He owes you an oath of loyalty. He should bring the Starks to your side, Connington said. That may be true in a southern court, Harry Strickland cautioned. But in war, blood matters less than swords and gold. The first Daemon started a war to secure his wife's crown. The North may not rally their banners for us. They may declare themselves independent. The North is full of savages who worship trees. Connington bit back. They should be happy to follow a southern king. The Starks don't agree. They overthrew the Mad King in the rebellion. They defeated Joffrey's lions in the Riverlands. If they support Daemon's claim, then claiming the throne will be much more difficult. The wolves beat the lions at war, Strickland replied. Lions? Wolves? Stags? The Westerosi are obsessed with sigils. The obese magister sucked the bones of a suckling pig. There is only one house that matters. The dragons. We need to look east, not west. Make Daenerys your wife, and gain her dragons. Then the conquest of the 7 kingdoms will be certain. The queen has not left Meereen for many moons. That may be due to the plague, but there was no sign before the outbreak that she wishes to depart. Are we certain she will join us? Strickland asked. We can give her an army, Connington said. She has an army! 8,000 unsullied soldiers, the remains of Khal Drogo's forces, thousands of fanatically loyal freed slaves, and 3 large dragons. Strickland mused. The Golden Company can add to her numbers, but enough to ask for dragons. She will have no choice. Illyrio's voice hardened, a sharp contrast to the bloated, fleshy body. Volantis has a fleet of 600 ships. The Great Masters have support from Tyrush, Myr, Lys, Quhor, Karth, and the cities of the Gis. Dothraki, Khals, Ironborn Reavers, merchant caravans, the Spicer Guild, the Pureborn, all benefit from the slave trade. Once the Volantian fleet arrives in Slaver's Bay, the Dragon Queen will need to flee Meereen. Who better to rescue her than a lost nephew? When her enemies siege the cities, we will whisk her dragons away. I have spoken with the Yunkish envoy. Lysano added, he has offered an enormous sum of gold to fight against Daenerys Targaryen. The amount is so great that it will beggar the masters if they lose, and will attract the other sellsword companies like flies to shit. We did not accept the contract. Your Grace, Strickland said, not officially, but we offered to help with training the forces, and some of our sergeants are preparing the battlefield. We won't fight against the Queen, but we will know when and where Volantis plans to strike. Our men are sailing with the fleet as observers. What will happen to my aunt's followers? Aegon said. The Unsullied will be cut down. Her Dothraki will be killed or enslaved by their own. Targaryens are difficult to control. It will be easier if her army is destroyed, Connington said. And the slaves? Aegon asked. They will be put back in chains, Connington shrugged. Unless they took up arms. Those will be crucified along the roads and gates as a warning to others. Many will be butchered, but not all. The masters need to replenish their numbers for the slave trade. There is no need to worry, my king. Slavery is like water in Essos. More slaves can always be found. Pirates and raiders harry the coasts. The Thraki shear the lamb men. New slaves breed in cities to serve their masters, be given as gifts, or sold in the markets. That is the way of the world. Lords can do what they want with small folk, and so can masters with chattel. The strong rule the weak, and the weak suffer as they must. Illyrio explained. But slavery is not accepted in Westeros. Aegon said, you have a kind heart, your grace. When you sit on the Iron Throne, you can assemble a great host in the name of justice. No doubt, the houses of Westeros will join a crusade against evil, and the cities of Essos will submit, for now, Such things are not possible. You can be righteous and honorable after victory. Those who lose in war are remembered for failure, not kindness. Illyrio said to the nods of the other commanders, Aegon was not fool enough to believe those honeyed words. Without the Golden Company's support, though, he had no chance. He needed the Magister's gold and influence. He needed his aunt's dragons. A king must make sacrifices to gain a crown. Her dreams had changed. In Dragonstone, when the cold winds gusted at night through the gloomy castle, Shireen dreamt of dragons waking from stone, ready to devour her. The old Maester had assured her that the visions were false, but then he died. Cresson drank a cup of wine with the Red Woman at a feast. Melisandre survived. Cresson did not. In the north, her dreams had changed. The dragons did not need to come to life. They had already awoken. They flew through the sky, their shadows eclipsing the sun. There were 3 of different colors and sizes, but the great beasts seemed to mean her no harm. Shireen was not convinced the danger had passed. Dragons were willful creatures, and only a bonded rider was safe from their anger. Was she too small and insignificant to matter? Her father proclaimed himself as the rightful king. That made her princess and heir to the Iron Throne. But she knew that titles were only words, and words were wind. The Targaryens had a stronger claim to rule, and they had dragons. A fully grown dragon could destroy an army. Snow was a Targaryen. When she was young, on those few occasions, she attended court. Shireen heard the king revile the Targaryens as treacherous scum, half mad with incest and lust. Uncle Robert was a bad judge of character. Jon Snow did not have the Valyrian features mentioned in songs. Pale skin, silver gold hair, and violet purple eyes, but he had the other attributes of the dragons. He was brave, clever, ambitious, and honorable. Perhaps he was terrible to his enemies, but he cared for family and followers. Shireen debated telling Jon Snow about her dreams. He would protect her from the dragons, even if she was a Baratheon. She was sure about that, given his kindness to the Wintertown children. The trestle table in the tap room groaned with platters, trays, and trenchers surrounded by jugs and pitchers. The Northmen broke their fast with large quantities of simple but comforting food, thick loaves of golden brown bread, porridge with honey and cream, twice-baked honey cakes, soft-boiled eggs, and oat biscuits. The cheese, bacon, sausage, salt pork, and smoked fish would be saved for the colder days to come. Shireen poured a cup of milk and spread a dollop of blackberry preserves on an oatcake before realizing that something was amiss. Edric Storm was nowhere to be seen. That was surprising. He loved to eat and drink, particularly before sparring in the yard with sword and shield or riding in the tilts with a lance or spear. Lady Whitstone. Shireen timidly approached the tall, dark-haired girl. Have you seen my cousin? No, is he missing? Maya asked. He is not at breakfast. He is not the sort to miss a meal. Shireen responded, like many growing boys, Edric had a fierce appetite. The Baratheon squire, a Wintertown boy sitting by the lady's side, asked. The Red Witch took him this morning to her quarters. What would she want with Edric? Is he a follower of R'hllor? Maya asked. No, Edric is a warrior's man. He wants to become a knight, anointed before the Seven. Shireen, does the Red Woman pose any danger to Edric? I thought that she was one of your father's most trusted advisors, Maya said. She is more feared than liked or trusted. I don't know what she might do. Shireen blurted out. There is no reason for Melisandre to spend time with Edric. We can seek her out. Maya stood up. Edric is my half-brother. I will not see him harmed. Melisandre is guarded by many. They patrol the door before her rooms. I don't know much about their sigils. Moths in gray and white, a winged pig, and 2 knights charging at each other with swords. They do not look friendly, the Wintertown boy said. My husband, Lord Mitchell, could force the issue, but it may come to violence. The Baratheon knights are a difficult bunch, prone to swaggering and boasting, and if this is your father's orders, he may take offense, and the Red Woman might seek revenge, Maya said. We do not have the power to confront King Stannis, but Jon Snow does. He has no fear of the Red Witch. The Wintertown boy said, Let us find my master. The boy's name was Chet, and he had been with Snow since the war in the Riverlands began. That gave him easy entry past the Stark knights and guards at the ring fort. The two great dire wolves nodded briefly as they entered the Solar, where Jon Snow and Arya Stark waited. The Wintertown boy quickly explained their concerns. Edric Storm has only been missing since this morning. Could there be another explanation? What purpose would the Red Woman have to hold him behind closed doors? Snow asked. I am not certain. Melisandre wields powerful magic, but I have never seen her do more than see visions in the night fires, Shireen said. Arya snorted. The witch might claim she has visions, but how do we know? Anyone can lie about what they see in flames. Chet, speak to the little birds. They watch carefully and know more. At the very least, they can tell us whether servants have seen the boy, Snow commanded. The Wintertown boy nodded, dashed outside, and returned quickly with several little birds. Shireen recognized them as stable hands and serving maids. They bowed reverently before pushing Chet forth as their speaker. The Red Woman claimed that the boy was ill with fever and the chills. 4 Baratheon knights came to take him away at dawn. Edric is as healthy as an ox. He certainly was not sick last night. Shireen noted. A short and slim girl, eyes keen with intelligence, spoke quickly into the Wintertown boy's ear. Chet nodded before continuing. Francis says the boy has not been seen, but that Stannis and Sir Davos have entered and left the room. She also saw through the window the Red Woman holding a jar of leeches. Leeches! Arya's face turned in disgust. What a disgusting way to treat an illness. Edric is not ill. The Red Woman wants blood. That explains the leeches, Jon said. Why would she want Edric's blood? Maya asked. Jon grimaced. The magic of Valyria is rooted in blood and fire. And so is the story of Azor Ahai. He forged Lightbringer with his wife's blood. But leeches will not give enough blood for that. Old Nan used to tell us that Black Heron used human blood in the mortar for the walls of Harrenhal, Arya said. It did not help House Horror when the dragons came. Blood magic is a queer thing. Harrenhal might be cursed for many reasons, not just blood in the walls, Snow said. What can we do to help Edric? Shireen asked. There may be nothing to do. Leeches purge a body of blood they do not kill. If Edric wasn't sick before, he would be weak and exhausted. He may seem ill, so Melisandre can cover up the lie. But if she wanted him dead, Edric would not be protected by Baratheon guards. Stannis knows of her actions, Snow said. So we should let her continue with this deviltry, Arya exclaimed. Magic is not good or evil. The White Walkers have cold magic and can raise the dead. Without those powers, they would not be much of a threat. There is other magic, Children of the Forest, the Dragon Lords of Valyria, and many others like Melisandre and priests of the Red God. We don't know what can aid us against the White Walkers. The witch took the blood of a boy to use in a spell. How can that possibly be a good thing? Jon shrugged. I doubt that it is. We find the Red God's prayers to be absurd, but Rower may have a role to play against the Great Other. Contrary to what the Citadel claims, the higher mysteries are real. Daenerys Targaryen has hatched 3 dragons in Essos. The White Walkers are rising beyond the wall. The witch may have a role to play in the fight against the dead. She better not do anything against House Stark, Arya swore. Lady Shireen, what would you like me to do? Melisandre is under your father's protection. I know little about blood magic, Jon said. Could you watch over him? She asked. That will be difficult. Edric will follow your father to the wall. I plan to meet with the Iron Bank soon. If your cousin needs protection, send him to Brevos. I would shelter him readily. But I doubt Edric will run away due to a leeching. Like many priests and sorcerers, Lady Melisandre has power over others. Jon sighed. Magic is a mystery to all, even the Valyrians. The ruby glowed against her skin, the red so vivid and bright that Myrcella thought it remarkable that her dress could conceal Garin's jewel. For the past week, she had stopped wearing the colors of her adopted homeland. The noble women Dorne honored their founding house with clothes of orange and yellow and gold and red. The red of House Martell, though, was a dull red, with hints of brown, like the endless sands west of the Greenblood. Myrcella wore a long silk frock of crimson and gold. She would have been home at Casterly Rock. Not even Lannister crimson was as deep or rich as the ruby gemstone. When Myrcella was certain that no one watched, in the safety of her room, she took out the jewel from between her young breasts. In candlelight or by the rays of the rising sun, the stone scintillated, and the red was the color of freshly shed blood, like a beating heart. Garin's jewel had a terrible, wonderful beauty. Kings, queens, priests, and wizards would kill for this stone. The matron mother pressed the jewel into Marcella's hands before she had died a week past. The body had been burned, the ashes collected in a crystal vase, and then scattered into the river. That was a shame, Marcella thought. The priestess wanted to return to the Rhone. In the few lucid moments the old woman shared with her, there had been stories of ancient cities on the river. These were tales of pirate queens, bold warriors, forgotten ruins, lost treasures, and golden islands with creatures never tamed by man. The Rhone was a vast and mysterious place. Who knew what lurked underneath, and what horrors and great deeds the mother had witnessed over the millennia? Marcella had tried to find out more in the libraries of Sunspear. Very few books told of the time before Nymeria's flight from Nysar. There was little detail on the cities of the Rhoynar, a quick brief mention of Troyan, but nothing on Sar Mel, Arnaud, and Volan Theris. In these tales, Garin the Great was a minor character, the man foolish enough to face down the dragons and bring down the sorrows. She considered asking Maester Caleote more, but that would attract Prince Doran's suspicions. Somehow, Marcella knew that would be very, very wrong. Garin's jewel was too precious to lose, and it had been given to her, not the Martells. "I can see the ship," Trystane yelled. Large white sails appeared on the horizon. Planky Town was a busy port, but swan ships from the Summer Isles were a rare sight. Prince Oberyn had sent a raven, saying that they booked passage on the Cinnamon Wind, returning to Tall Tree Towns by way of Dorne. Oberyn's younger daughters had accompanied Trystane and Arianne to the harbor, along with a battalion of Martell guards. Daemon Sand, Arianne's sworn shield, sealed off the docks. "Do you think father will bring us anything?" Little Loreza Sand said. She was the youngest of the Sand Snakes, and precocious for her age. "King's Landing has nothing of value." Elia Sand sniffed. The tall, thin girl was the oldest of Valeria's children, and named after her dead aunt. Besides Oberyn, she was the best on the horse, and able to match knights twice her age in a joust. "They are coming from Maidenpool, and the ship carries something more important than gifts." Arianne said, "We already have the secrets to the elixir. The healers have brewed several batches with the notes that Prince Oberyn dispatched. Meister Miles says the cure is an extraordinary invention, one that will save tens of thousands even after the plague has passed," Trystane said. "I was not talking about the elixir." Arianne rolled her eyes. "I mean news of the lost Targaryen prince. When will he march against the Iron Throne? The Lannisters want his head. The North knows that. Jon Snow also saved Lady Lyanna Tyrell from the plague. If Snow gains sufficient allies, then Joffrey's days are numbered." "Do you think he can hatch a dragon?" the youngest Sand Snake asked excitedly. "I would marry him if he had a dragon." Arianne laughed prettily. "You have 7 name days. Loressa, I don't think we should be planning betrothals quite yet. If Snow marries, it would be for an army. He might need it soon." Daenerys Targaryen had dragons. And that was how she had subjugated Astapor, Yunkai, and Meereen. Jon Snow, or Prince Daemon, had the strongest claim, and likely the North and the Riverlands. If the two wed, then all of the 7 kingdoms would have to submit. That included Dorne, despite their claims of political independence. Marcella had no doubt an unified Targaryen family, after claiming the Iron Throne, could bring House Martell to their knees. She hoped that Tommen and her uncles would be spared. The Cinnamon Wind docked, and several Summer Islanders lashed ropes from the sides to the pilings of the quay. A sailor with a colorful feather cloak leapt off the deck and secured the gangplank. Prince Oberyn and Lady Ellaria descended first. The prince's older daughters, Obora, Nymeria, Tyene, and Sarella, joined them, and Arianne cooed over her cousins, who embraced the 4 younger Sand Snakes. Loreza and Doria hugged Nym, who had fully recovered from the sickness. There was much laughter and joy among the girls. A young boy in flowing robes and headscarf came down last. He was handsome in an ethereal way, with pale blonde hair and purple eyes that matched a pale purple cloak. Trystane tugged at her hand. "Marcella, let us greet Edric Dane. He can tell us more about Maidenpool." The ruby on her chest began to throb and warm as if waking from a long and deep sleep. Myrcella betrayed none of her fears as she extended her hand in welcome. Meereen slumbered, the twisted alleys and wide brick streets deserted and empty. Few people, freeborn or freedmen and freedwomen, frequented the temples, baths, and plazas. Those who went out to buy loaves of hard bread and jugs of pale thin wine did so quietly, and then retreated to hovels, houses, and palaces. The fighting pits were closed, the brothels and marketplaces forsaken. Only children, under the watchful eyes of the unsullied, played in the fountains, braving the sweltering heat, and laughing among the pools and terraces. Meereen was dying, Daenerys thought as she looked over the edge of the garden at the lesser pyramids below. The Gishgari built these monstrosities to awe the subjects of the old empire and claimed that the tops of the stepped pyramids served as shrines to house their gods. Each city had their own patron deity, and in Meereen, the harpy, clutching a thunderbolt in her talons, ruled. But then the dragons came and laid waste to old Gishgari. Meereen had once been rich and fat and peaceful. Now the city was poor and hungry. Many, even some ex-slaves, blamed her. There was some truth to that. I gave them freedom, Daenerys thought, but not prosperity. They could not blame the plague on her, though. Not when she had brought the cure to Slaver's Bay. Khaleesi, the sea shrike, has docked at the mouth of the river. Missandei said, "Can this one dress you for court?" Daenerys shook her head. Iri and Juki have braided my hair. With the plague, there will be no need for the audience chamber to receive petitioners. I will see Sir Barristan in these apartments. I want to speak privately about his time in Maidenpool. The nobles and graces are eager to hear too. You must ban the cupbearers from your presence if you do not wish others to know. The cupbearers are children. Most had fewer than 8 name days. Yes, Khaleesi, but their fathers were the great masters of Meereen, and there are enough servants to pass along information to their families. The news of the Sea Shrike's return will spread. I only want to hear about my nephew before others. After Viserys died, I thought I was the only Targaryen left. Is Jon Snow truly your brother's son? Missandei asked. I saw him in the glass candle, a single tower engulfed in green flames, a spring-fed pool, a walled city on the Bay of Crabs. A dragon emerged from the fires. I did not know the full tale, or that he was Rhaegar's son, but he is most certainly a Targaryen. Her nephew had cured the plague. That was a formidable thing, even compared with the reign of kings. But that is good news, Khaleesi. It is good to discover family, even ones that are far away. Now you know of this Jon Snow, and he knows of you. Family is important. Daenerys pursed her lips. My house is not like others. I only knew my brother, and he was cruel and stupid. He protected me as a child, but he would have raped me if my maidenhead was not needed for marriage to Khal Drogo. His anger was terrible when roused. Viserys claimed I was waking the dragon. Dragons are willful creatures. I know nothing of my nephew, Daemon. What if he is mad, like so many Targaryens? I only know one Targaryen, and she is Queen of Meereen and Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea. This Jon Snow may be more like you than your brother, Missandei said. And would that be such a good thing? Daenerys turned to the terrace. The lesser pyramids of Meereen, built in the colors of their noble houses, dotted the horizon. I am not a good ruler. My people suffer. They are hungry and poor. The masters of this wretched city plot to overthrow me. The sons of the Harpy murder freedmen openly. There is no trade in Slaver's Bay. The other cities in Essos are allied with the slavers. The Green Grace wishes me to marry his daughter Zolorok, to stop the killings. My council suspect his daughter of leading the sons of the Harpy. What dragon ever married a Harpy? Khaleesi, you should not marry this Hisdar. All rich men in Meereen made their money from the backs of slaves. Then I would be a bad queen. There will be more killings of my people. Better for people to die than to suffer as slaves. This one knows that very well. Missandei rubbed her neck, where the faint traces of an iron ring remained. You are the breaker of chains. You freed us from the masters. We may be hungry. We may fall in battle, but at least we will die as freedmen. We believe in you, my queen. Her young handmaiden was honest and faithful. Daenerys wondered if belief was enough for the wars to come. She had crushed the masters, but they had come back, scuttling out of the shadows like vermin. Her rule extended only as far as the reach of her dragons. I barely control Meereen, and I have no way to stop the killings in Yunkai and Estapor, she thought. Conquest from the back of a dragon was easy. It was the dismounting and governing that was hard. The Targaryen queen took Missandei's small hand into her own. You are right. We must look to a better world, when all slaves are freed from shackles. I will not hide away in my apartments. I shall receive Sir Barristan in the great hall. There I will hear the news of my nephew. Daenerys had to appear strong for her people. A dragon does not hide. The Great Pyramid of Meereen returned to life, the unsullied guards keeping a wary eye on the supplicants making their way up the steps to the audience chamber. Her blood riders also attended, their araks, whips, and bells, a sharp contrast to the spiked bronze caps, short spears, shields, and drab quilted tunics of the eunuch soldiers. The nobility of Meereen, who could trace their ancestry back 10 generations, showed up in force. The weak eyes of a frowning Hizdar darted through the crowd. She was dressed for war. Gone were the colorful and ridiculous robes that the Guscari favored. The freeborn of Slaver's Bay wore the tokar, a strange garment, useless to any working man. The tokar was a long, loose sheet that needed to be wrapped around the hips, under the arms, and over a shoulder to display the fringes of gold and jewels. Both hands and multiple servants were needed for such a robe. Hizdar had a dozen tokars, purple, emerald, burgundy, and lilac adorned with golden stripes, beads, amethysts, and pearls. Daenerys wore scale-embossed leather in red and black. A brooch of a snarling dragon head rested above her right breast, and a crown of a three-headed dragon, coils of silver and wings of gold, sat on her brow. Rise, Sarah, and tell me of your travels. She commanded the old knight. Your Grace, I have returned from Maidenpool. We have brought several barrels of the cure, and also carry scrolls with the instructions on how to brew the elixir. It is a gift from your nephew, Prince Daemon Targaryen. Is he for certain my nephew? He walked through fire. He has much of your brother Rhaegar, the Silver Prince. He does not have silver hair or purple eyes, but he has the same nature. Prince Daemon is devoted to his friends and family. He considers it his duty to help you. But would it help me? Daenerys knew that the laws of Westeros favored sons. No woman had ever sat on the Iron Throne. The past great councils were precedent. Daemon's claim easily outranked hers. She had dragons, but she did not wish to fight her family and repeat the dance. My nephew's words are kind, but he offers more than words. Sir Barristan took out a sheaf of papers from a small battered metal coffer in his leather pouch. The prince asked questions about your rule and gave me something else to bring. Missandei collected the papers and took them over to the ebony bench. Daenerys scanned the sheets of thin, closely written parchment full of drawings, diagrams, and calculations. She did not quite understand the words. Sir Barristan, what is this writing? The secrets of forging and tempering metals, of erecting wind and water mills, of shaping and firing glass, and planting and cultivating. Prince Daemon could not impart all his knowledge, but he wrote down what he could. The North grows rich from this knowledge. They build mines, farms, bridges, and roads. He wishes the same for your lands. Daenerys swallowed back her surprise. This might be an incredible gift. The masters had built an empire on the backs and blood of slaves. Here was another way to create wealth with honest labor. She could keep her people employed. Daemon had given her something of real value. She handed the papers over to an eager Missandei. My nephew is kind. I shall return his generosity. Daenerys stopped for a moment. There was little in Meereen that a Targaryen prince would want. Gold, gems, and jewels, perhaps. But those riches were acquired by the slave trade. Her nephew seemed to not care about money. We must find something to send north. Your Grace, that may not be necessary. Prince Daemon is coming to Meereen, the knight said. The shock on her face could not be hidden. Neither could the angry hissing in the chamber. Death! 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 The raven shrieked, two beady eyes flitting around the solar. The impudent bird flapped dark wings, shaking snowflakes off glossy black feathers as it strutted around, waiting for Rob to scatter a handful of corn kernels on the wooden desk. In an instant, the raven croaked with triumph before dipping a curved beak to gobble down the offering. Jon sighed. The raven was clever, almost too clever. It was large, similar in size to the white birds sent out by the Citadel to mark a change in seasons. and the oldest in the Winterfell rookery, the dire wolves, enjoying the chilly autumn air near the open windows, ignored the antics, but the raven puffed up at the attention of the others in the room. "What do you think that means?" Rob stared at the preening bird. Sansa's letter on the mustering of the northern bannermen sat unread next to a pouch of corn. "It means a raven will do anything for food. Keep feeding him after he cries death, and he will never stop." Jon ruffled the feathers. Most ravens preferred meat. This one enjoyed fruit and corn, and was bold enough to connive a payment for its flight. "So you don't think the words carry any weight?" Rob asked warily. "A raven mimics how others speak, with letters about the threat beyond the wall, and the Red Women preaching about the Great War. It is not surprising the bird speaks of death." "It could be an omen," Rob argued, "like the dire wolf mother killed by a stag's antler. Old Nan told us that ravens were the messengers of the gods." He shrugged in reply. "Let us say it is a prophecy. What does it mean?" Bran dreamt of a cowled rider on a pale mare. That was likely the plague, coming to reap many lives. We found the cure. We already know that there is danger. We do not need a raven to tell us that. Melisandre approached and gave me a warning. She sees you surrounded by skulls, and to be wary of knives in the dark, Rob said. "Can't the witch say who wields these knives?" Arya asked irritably. "That way we might be able to do something, and not just wait to be attacked." "She sees visions in the flames." "That does not mean she knows what will happen in the future. If she did, then Stannis Baratheon would be sitting on the Iron Throne. The Red Woman may have certain powers, but the gods only grant so much. Else we would be ruled by priests and sorcerers. R'hllor is only one of many gods in Essos," Jon said. "I don't trust Melisandre. She took Edric Storm's blood. I don't believe in her red god. Syrio Foro, my dancing master, told me that there is only one god, and his name is Death. And the only thing to say to Death is not today." Arya said, "Life is more than not dying. Death is all around us. It is not to be shunned, but a part of our world. The stranger is not the great other. He will not be denied." Jon replied, "We need the stranger to bless our enemies. We lost 10,000 in the Riverlands. That doesn't count the Boltons and Freys who betrayed us. The toll would be greater had you not trained the Wintertown boys to serve as healers to the Northern Army. The North cannot afford to continue bleeding." Rob said, "That is why we need help. The North is outmatched by the others. The gold from the Iron Bank could buy us sellswords. And if we go further east, we will find dragons." Arya said, "Sellswords have never won a war in the Seven Kingdoms. Dragons have. But there are many cities between here and Meereen. What if Melisandre is right and death is waiting for you in the free cities? There is danger in the unknown," Rob said. "There is danger here, too, particularly if we do nothing." Jon took out a faded scroll with a map marked with the 9 voyages of the Sea Snake. The longest route was the second to Ashai at the border of the Shadowlands. To the north, an army of the dead will try to cross the wall. To the south, the Iron Throne will seek revenge for their losses and humiliation in the War of the Riverlands. Are there more enemies east? Possibly, but Arya is right. We have to do something. Sitting here and waiting for the Red Woman and her followers to save the day would be foolish. If I am wrong, then give Stannis the glory as Azor Ahai. But if the others smash the remains of the Baratheons, we will need allies. And that means going into the unknown. If that is the case, then you take all possible precautions, take Stark guards with you, and Arya, many knights will be happy to join you in this journey." Jon shook his head. "You need swords and spears to defend the wall against the others. I do not know how long the trip will take. After the fighting in the Riverlands, the bannermen wish to stay at home and rally their people. That is doubly true for the Riverlords and Velamen who swore oaths at Winterfell. Besides, stealth will serve better than steel in Essos. Arya and I will have Nymeria and Ghost for company. Take the Hound with you as well. Clegane is a good fighter and loyal. There is something else. To sail to Slaver's Bay, and Meereen will require the best ship and captain available in the north. I have asked Sansa to send Ashar Greyjoy here." "Can we trust an Ironborn?" Arya asked. "To sail a ship? Yes," Jon said. "For other matters, we have to see." Asha Greyjoy is bold and proud, but these are good qualities for a sea captain. She is well liked by her crew. She can be a prisoner in Winterfell or a free woman sailing the summer sea. Rob said, we know what she will choose. The loud hammering woke Tyrion up from a fitful slumber. He cracked open a bleary eye and wished to the seven that he had drank more wine last night. A few more cups of Arbor Gold, and he might sleep longer. In the past, the view from the second floor of the kitchen keep had been pleasant. The God's Wood, the Maiden Vault, and a courtyard of fat and happy pigs, too content and stupid to know they were about to be slaughtered for the morning bacon. Now the pigs had scattered, disturbed by the construction at the wall overlooking Blackwater Bay. A year ago, the White Sword Tower stood at the corner before being obliterated by wildfire. Tyrion did not regret the events of that tumultuous day. He had never wanted to marry Sansa Stark. His father's plan of attempting to claim Winterfell through the girl's womb had been foolish and would likely have cost Tyrion his head. He was quite happy to have survived. After discovering the immense caches of wildfire in the secret tunnels, it was clear that Snow could have killed them all many times over. Maegor's Holdfast, with its moat and thick walls, might have survived. The rest of the Red Keep would have been smoking rubble. His father, Lord Tywin, had ordered the reconstruction of White Sword Tower. The new building would not be a slender four-story cylinder, but a great drum tower, wider than it was tall, crowned with iron ramparts. There would be spacious apartments for the 6 brothers of the Kingsguard, and the top floor would be richly decorated, suitable for a Lord Commander who would lead armies on behalf of the Iron Throne. Sholme hated the idea. Tyrion did not like it much either. Holme's distaste was based on the history of the Order as captured by the White Book. To his brother, the White Cloaks were more than just swords for the crown. They were a brotherhood of knights who dedicated their lives to the king, honorable, selfless, dutiful, not the brightest of men, but they were sworn to serve, not to rule. Prince Aemon, the Dragon Knight, Sir Riam Redwine, Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, and the finest knight of his time. Holme's idols never cared about silk sheets, personal comfort, or splendid quarters. Tyrion's objection was far more prosaic. He understood why his father wanted a grander and larger tower, to show that despite recent setbacks, House Lannister was the richest and most powerful family in the 7 Kingdoms. There was a problem, though. The Iron Throne was out of money. Before dying from a crossbow bolt, Lord Varys said that power resides where men believed where it resides. That might be true, but gold was different. Gold could be counted. He sat down at the Solar to break his fast. Tyrion poured a cup of wine carefully, as not to stain the thick ledgers with food or drink. Balish's accounts as master of coin were already a mess. The records of the brothels were riddled with fabrications like the receipts of the royal treasury. The scent of meat roasting over a fire caused his stomach to rumble. It would be hours before the leg of lamb, basted with mint, garlic, honey, and dried cherries, was ready to eat. Tyrion ordered the maid to bring a hot meal from the castle kitchen. The heavy tray of warm bread, poached eggs, fried sausages, and honey duck was welcome. The disheveled sellsword with a bruised face and a black eye was not. What happened to you? Late night at the brothels. Tyrion spread blackberry jam over a buttermilk biscuit. Bronn grabbed a sausage with his right hand. The exposed knuckles were scuffed and the skin was scraped and bloody. I was at Cobbler's Square this morning. Don't you know what is going on in this damn city? The riots were over, but signs of the damage and destruction remained. Tyrion had not left the safety of the Red Keep for weeks. The small folk and merchants had no love for the Lannisters. That is what I am paying you for. With Baelish and Varys dead, the Iron Throne had to rebuild a network of spies. He had no doubt his sister and father were trying to do the same. One of your uncles, Sir Harris Swift, was trying to collect the poll tax. He called a meeting at the Broken Anvil. Tyrion interrupted. Harry Swift is not my uncle. He is Sir Kevin's good father. He managed somehow to marry his plain daughter into the Lannisters. His only achievement. Bronn gave every sign of annoyance. Do you think I give a fuck? Well, carry on. Tyrion helped himself to the duck breast soaked in honey and accompanied by pears poached in wine. The fat of the rich sauce glistened on his lips. Swift harangued the craftsmen and guild leaders about the tax. He said if their districts were short, they would have to pay for anyone missing. That was the wrong thing to say. No shit, dwarf. Bronn helped himself to a cup of wine. They started throwing rocks. That was all right. We had shields. But then some arse brought tar from River Row. They tarred and feathered Harys Swift. Tyrion was too shocked to take a bite of the light biscuit. The mob tried to tar and feather anyone collecting the tax. 3 Lannister guards were beaten senseless. The City Watch ran away rather than face the crowd. They stripped your uncle of his fancy silk cloak and threw tar on his breeches and doublet. We got him out of there before they could roll him onto a bed of feathers. I am sure Sir Harys will be grateful to you. He might give you lands for a reward. The sigil of House Swift was a blue Bantam rooster on a yellow field. Tyrion wondered if the feckless Harys appreciated the irony. A good feathering would make the soft and fat knight more like the banner of a blue chicken. Then again, the Knight of Cornfield was not a clever man. The Harys Swift is crying like a child to the maester. He will never collect a poll tax again. Why is this so important? The tax is only 2 groats ahead. Is 2 groats worth a revolt? 2 groats is a copper star. 7 stars is a silver stag. 7 stags is a silver moon. And 30 of those make up a gold dragon. Tyrion had known those numbers since he could talk. A Lannister knew the price of everything. I can count just as well as you. I can't read, but I am fond of coins. And getting paid. Bronn had finished his cup. Are you raising taxes for a war? Why else would you shear the small folk? We are replacing the old taxes, Tyrion explained. Just a temporary measure, until the crown's funding returns. Before the war, Baelish collected 3 types of taxes: custom duties, fees for offices and titles, and a land tax. But none of those have gone away. The Tyrells are in King's Landing, and those Rose fuckers are rich. You don't need money for sellswords without a war. So, why a tax on the poor? The plague is over, but trade is down, particularly in Old Town. There are no offices to bestow. The revenues from the land tax have dropped by a lot, Tyrion admitted. The North doesn't pay. The Reach insists that the Riverlands are exempt for several years, given how much the towns, castles, and fields suffered from fires, floods, and the war. No tax is collected in the Stormlands. With Baelish dead, the Valyman claim they have already paid the Aerie. The Iron Throne must have money, else how can the king pay for guards and servants? Seems like the Iron Throne is paying you plenty, Bronn noted. The maid had brought in more plates, given that it was getting too late for breakfast. Spiced squash, baby spinach, dressed with apples, crumbled cheese, and pine nuts, and white beans with bacon accompanied the main dish of quails drowned in butter. Tyrion gestured for his sworn sword to join him in the meal. The food would distract Bronn from the true reason behind the poll tax. The Braavosi demanded payment in gold and silver, not debased coins. Revolts could be put down, but the Iron Bank would have its due. Lords bent the knee to kings, but kings had to submit to banks, else their reign would be cut short. The late and unlamented Varys and Baelish were quite similar, Tyrion thought. They were both ambitious and cunning. Using their positions as small council members to advance there were underestimated, due to their low birth and viewed as unsavory. But helpful to those in power, the spider's trade was secrets dribbled into eager ears. Baelish provided something just as seductive: gold. Littlefinger had an abundant supply of gold, raised from the Lannisters, the faith in the Tyrells, borrowed from the Iron Bank, and produced by adulterating gold and silver with copper and tin. It was easy to agree to requests for more money. It was much less pleasant to say no. Thanks to Baelish, Tyrion was forced to play the Mazur. Ser Jaxelin Bywater wanted funds to hire more watchmen after the riots. The crown did not have any coin to spare. The High Sparrow demanded the repair of septs burned in the war. Septs were quite low in the list of priorities. No income came from the Riverlands, so the Iron Throne could not help reconstruct the castles, marketplaces, and towns put to the sword. Tyrion barely had enough to cover the needs of the harbor masters and customs collectors. No one in King's Landing gave a shit about the problems of the crown. Everyone looked out for themselves. That was evident in the plans for the royal wedding. The Tyrells would marry the Rose of Highgarden to his nephew. His sister Cersei and Lord Mace expected Joffrey's nuptials to be a grand affair, rivaling the golden wedding of Alyssa Velaryon and Rhaegar Baratheon. It was pointless to note that Jaehaerys and Alysanne had a far smaller wedding and a much happier marriage. Tyrion tried his best, but his thoughtful comments fell on deaf ears. Do we really need 7 singers? How many versions of the Reigns of Castamere does my father need? Tyrion asked. 7. If the Lord Hand had his way. 7 is a holy number for the faith. 7 kingdoms. 7 gods. So we have 7 singers during the 77 courses. Olenna replied, Joffrey did not rule over 7 kingdoms. Only the Westerlands, the Reach and the Eyrie could be seen as truly tied to the Iron Throne. The Iron Islands were in revolt, the North had broken away, and the Stormlands were rudderless. As for Dorne, the Martells were absent from King's Landing. At least, they had not declared for the North. Do we really need 77 courses? No one can eat that much food. No one will even notice if we serve half as much. Well, my son Mace might disagree, Olenna said. What do you wish to cut, Lord Treasurer? The swan poached in saffron and peaches, the giant pigeon pie, the crabs boiled in fiery eastern spices, or the whole roast peacock stuffed with dates. All of it, or at least have less in each course. One can only eat so much swan, heron, pheasants, pigeons, quail, and peacock before it all tastes like chicken. Tyrion said. No one attends the royal wedding for the food. Olenna said wryly, I did not come to King's Landing to dicker over my granddaughter like a fishmonger. But the cost. Queen Marguerite would be better served if her reign started with less debt. She glared with barely concealed contempt. Joffrey's reign will be short without the Reach. House Tyrell will pay for the singers, but the Iron Throne for the other entertainers. The Reach will pay half the cost of the food. I am sure House Lannister can find enough money for peacocks and swans. If not, then take it from your bannermen. Your father knows how. Tyrion was still musing about the royal marriage when a page brought the summons from the hand of the king. The tower was ruined, the top floors marked by black ashes and gray soot. Green dust and small fissures marked the scorched walls and discolored stone. A more sensible man would have knocked the structure down and built new foundations, undamaged by wildfire. His father was not sensible. Tywin Lannister would not wait to rebuild. His pride was too great to work from the kitchen keep or a barrack house. Tyrion made his way to the solar. The chamber was bare of any wall hangings, steel mirrors, and woven tapestries. The elegant desk had been replaced by a massive and sturdy oak table. The fireplaces were bricked up. Lord Tywin would not tolerate any secret passages in his tower. Tyrion sat down with the thick leather-bound book on his lap. It had only been a few weeks, but with Baelish's death, he had made considerable progress in unraveling the Mockingbird's trails. Unfortunately, many led to nests in Essos, far away from the reach of the Iron Throne. You met with the Tyrells today. Why hasn't this wedding taken place already? Tywin did not bother to look up from the letters on the table. I spoke to Lady Olenna about the costs. The Reach will pay for half, but even with that, the expenses will be considerable. 77 courses. His father scowled. I do not care to discuss Joffrey's wedding planning. That is for fools like Mace. The Tyrells are dragging their feet. They are slow to send out ravens, and many of their most important bannermen will take weeks to arrive at King's Landing. By counting coppers, you give the Reach more time to intrigue against us. The plague ended less than a moon ago. That had been the real reason for the delay. No house would send their lords and heirs to the Red Keep until that threat was over. Tyrion knew that it was imperative for Joffrey to wed Margaery soon. His nephew had a thin veneer of charm, but the mask would only hide the boy's cruelty and sadism for so long. We need Tyrell gold. We barely have enough funds to cover the Red Keep's expenses. Even with you melting down the groats and using the copper for stags, Tywin asked sharply. The Iron Bank expects their payments in pure gold and silver. They refuse to take our coin. Tycho Nestoris brings in Cuahoric smiths to weigh and appraise the bars. We cannot cheat them. Baelish borrowed far more gold than we can repay. Tyrion answered. Delay our payments, then. The Iron Bank is a fearful enemy, but even they need time to muster a force capable of threatening the Iron Throne. Tywin grimaced. No, they don't. Tyrion replied forcefully. The only thing the Iron Bank needs to do is to weigh one of our coins in public. When it is revealed that the dragons and the stags have been debased, we are fucked. No merchant from the free cities will take payment in our coin. The sea captains will take their trade elsewhere, and anyone who holds old coins will refuse to spend them. It will be as bad as the war in the Riverlands. Worse. A war in the Riverlands is far away for many in the Seven Kingdoms, but destroying the value of their coins that everyone understands, we are fucked if the Iron Bank reveals Baelish's secret. Your secret too. You are the master of coin. The new silver stags you minted are mostly brass and copper, Tywin sneered. The blame for the coinage fiasco would fall on him. Tyrion could not even deny it. He had given the instructions to the 4 keepers of the keys at the Royal Mint.